Hello, everyone, and welcome to Cinema Span. I am your host, Louis Iligas IV. Joining me today, I have Samantha Georgette Reed from Archetypes Productions, and I've also got Devin Beckwith, comedian, improviser around LA. Thanks for joining me, guys.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Of course. Today, we are tackling a big one, two Stephen Sondheim movies. Sorta. One of them is a movie proper. The other is like a film concert stage, but still counts. I do. Okay. Devin, I see the wins. If you have looked up Company online, you may notice it's a 2008 film.
Oof.
But okay, this production originally started in December of 2006, ran for most of 2007. And was filmed in 2007. And I just, there probably wasn't a lot of editing here. They probably just waited a bit.
They were probably,
Broadway.
Yeah, they were out of post by the end.
That's what I was going to say. There's not much work to be done on this. It's like, and it feels like it's a relic of 07 too, like more specifically, especially because Sondheim, like revivals really don't happen very often at all.
Except right now.
Well, now we're in like a golden age.
We're in the
which is
Sondheim-a-sance.
Insane that it took him dying for this to kind of happen. But I do think the Sweeney Todd production that was just on Broadway, like Sondheim was in the rehearsal studio with that at some point before he died.
I think so. I know he was for Into the Woods.
Maybe that's what I'm thinking of.
He cast
the Into the Woods.
But I think that there was also something with Sweeney as well.
Which it's cool. I mean, they're probably like his biggest shows, Sweeney Todd and Company and Into the Woods, right?
Yeah.
Other than West Side Story and Gypsy, which
are kind
of half. Before we get into the movies proper, like, what are your guys'? How did you like get into Sondheim at all? And what's your relationship with him? I feel like it's really. I picked you two specifically. I should say we all went to the same high school.
Yes.
So we were all theater kids, probably experiencing
Bishop Gorman moved them chains.
Sondheim for the first time in that time. But yeah, I don't know. It's just like he's a titan in the musical theater industry, but it's not an industry that gets a lot of recognition, you know?
Yeah.
So my introduction to Sondheim was Into the Woods. When I was 9, I think what the revival was in 07, I believe.
The 2002?
2002. Oh, so I would have been way younger. My aunt saw that revival and loved it. So she gave the CD to my mom, who was like really into musicals like I now am. And she would listen to it in the car all the time. And I eventually grew to love listening to it in the car. So like, in a way, I almost grew up with Into the Woods. And then like, as I was like old enough to be able to like discover things on my own, I started like looking to like, oh, this Sondheim guy who did Into the Woods, he's done a lot of other really cool stuff.
It's so funny because Into the Woods is maybe one of his most mature works, but it feels like it's so right for kids because it is fairy tales.
Yeah. And I think a lot of the lessons like resonate with me so much more because some of them I like learned the easy way from listening to it or didn't learn it and then learned it the hard way and then was like, fuck, I gotta listen to that song, man.
That's too good. Yeah, Sammy and I were just in a production of Into the Woods.
Yeah, we were.
But yeah.
Who'd we play, Louis?
We played... I was about to mess it up. We played Cinderella and Cinderella's Prince, respectively.
They made a cute couple.
We were really adorable.
Yeah, pretty great.
We were great.
But it's a show that I also did in high school, and it's just so interesting, like, revisiting it a full decade later, because... It's just the type of show that does really keep growing, the more you mature as well. Sammy?
Yeah, so my Sondheim introduction was Into the Woods, Bishop Gorman. And because I was like like I was saying, I was a musical theater kid, but it was very much like, I liked Wicked, I liked Wizard of Oz, like shows that were very, very popular, like in the mainstream.
Yeah, very ballad heavy, like emotional, like shows. That I mean, that's the beauty of Sondheim is like they all feel like they're really detailed and nuanced takes on human just behavior. But it's not exactly a flashy thing when you're in high school.
No,
you're like, I want to be Alphabet. Like,
yeah, exactly. Yeah. But then I just started, kind of my Sondheim introduction was I just started being in Sondheim things and like Sondheim numbers. Like my senior year of high school, we did like one of the, you remember the winter music extravaganzas?
Of course.
Yeah. So for those who didn't go to Bishop Gorman High School.
This is a podcast for only Gale alumni.
This is a podcast for Dylan Westry, Mo Moffat,
and Dylan Arredondo.
Yeah. But so, yeah, when we were doing winter music extravaganza. Wow, hang on. Winter music extravaganzas were like these musical reviews with a bunch of different things from different musicals, and sometimes students would get to direct certain ones. And William Riley, do you guys remember William Riley?
Yeah, he stage managed our Fringe show in Vegas.
Yeah.
Did he really?
Yeah,
he did.
He's a sweetheart.
It was great.
I love that. I love that man so much. He really wanted to do God That's Good from Sweeney Todd.
Wow.
And he came up to me and he was like, you're auditioning for mine, right? And I was like, oh yeah, I guess. Like, cause remember we would have those in-class auditions.
Right.
And I was super busy. It was my senior year. I was auditioning for a bunch of things, and I had just gotten cast as Miss Dorothy in Thoroughly Modern Millie. And I was like, I don't know if I'm gonna like go for the solo, Will. Like, I think I'm just gonna, and he was like, no. And I was like, well, it's a really hard song. And he was like, please. And I was like, okay. And I went up and I did like that audition, and then I got the Mrs. Lovett part in that, and then I just kind of kept getting put in like Sondheim things. Like I was in a Sondheim at Chapman, they do directing scenes. I was in one Sondheim moment, and then my beginning of my junior year, my friend was casting company, and he was like, oh, will you audition? And I was like, I want to be Bobby. And he was like, we can't get the rights for the female Bobby keys. And I was like, I'll sing it in the male key. And he was like, will you please just audition for Amy? And I was like, yes. And then, so then I got in that, and then I got cast as Cinderella in Into the Woods. And I've kind of just like accidented myself into being like a little Sondheim sweetheart over here, which is so funny because he was never, until recently, he was not one of the composers that I would have said like is among my favorites. But
wow.
Yeah, like for a long time, I was just like, oh, I don't know, like Sondheim's good. But, and then like throughout, I feel like when I did Company, it was when I was like, oh my God, Sondheim like speaks to a part of my brain that I did not previously know existed. So that's my
Company
Sondheim.
Absolutely was like a deep one for me. I mean, I obsessively listened to Into the Woods because we were doing it the next year, and I'm like, okay, I need to know everything here. But I think Company, Frogs, and like Form all kind of just like introduced me to like more sensibilities from Sondheim. I mean, Company we'll get to in the second half more so, but like it's just he writes loneliness so well, like it's on top of the expectations of being in a relationship. It's unreal stuff. Into the Woods at Bishop Gorman was definitely my introduction to Sondheim. I remember telling Devin that I wanted to get into musicals, and I asked him to put together like a couple mix CDs for me, basically. And so he made me a comedy like disc, a romance disc, and then just like a general Broadway disc.
Okay, that is the cutest shit I have ever heard.
Yeah, so adorable. And me and Devin would listen to show tunes. I would drive him home from work, and from school, and we would always just listen to songs and dish out the parts, like
you
classic
got
style. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Jersey Boys was another one of our obsessions back then, but it just because it's
4-part,
it's an easy one to be like, all right, I'll take the high notes on this one.
Yeah. I was like, who's gonna absolutely like suck at the Frankie Valli part this time? Is it?
But think they're nailing it.
Yeah, of course. Well, I will say on that, that when I did the barbershop quartet at Gorman 2 years later, we also did a lot of Four Seasons in the car, but it was 4 of us, so we actually could do the harmonies.
Yeah, you did the what Knight's Rhythm used to be, right?
Yes,
like
yes,
the
Nightingales.
actual acoustic. Yeah, that's awesome. So Sweeney Todd is this movie adaptation is directed by Tim Burton, and stars Johnny Depp and Tim Burton's wife Helen Bonham Carter, and it's kind of the peak of Tim Burton and Johnny Depp's power together. Mm-hmm. This is coming right after Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. Which is kind of like, I think it's still well received enough, but this is before Alice in Wonderland, where I feel like it just really gets away from them.
Yeah.
But it is interesting because I was saying that Tim Burton wanted to make this like about 20 years earlier. He had seen a London revival, and it only ran for like a couple months, but he went like 12 times to go see it, is the way Sondheim described it. And told him like backstage there, like, I would love to make this. And Sondheim's like, great. Cool. Just never heard from him again. Type deal.
He was waiting.
Yeah, seriously. But it's
like,
also,
Johnny's not old enough yet.
I mean, maybe. And that is like the interesting thing here is like in one of the featurettes I saw, his wife said like he doesn't really love musicals, but this is the type of musical that like a lot of people who don't like musicals love, because it is it's the opposite of what you would imagine from a musical. Instead of bright and cheery numbers, you have these songs about murder that are filled with minor chords, and they're meant to scare you, just from like the presence of it. And that makes sense for Burton, but it's also not very heavy into the musical stuff. He cuts a lot of the songs. He cuts the ballads. Like he truly tries to make it like a movie adaptation, and like dropping kind of a lot of the stage pretenses here.
That makes so much sense. As somebody who has not listened to or seen the musical, but only watched the movie.
Oh my God.
That answers like maybe half of my questions.
Oh boy. Oh my God. Okay. I love that information. Thank you for dropping that before we went into this.
Insane. I knew you told me a couple days ago, and I was like, okay, but I was like, maybe he'll like get around to listening to one of the cast recordings.
Well,
that is so funny.
It's partly true because of you. I don't know if you remember, but maybe a couple of years ago, you had found out that I had never listened to Sweeney Todd or anything. And you were like, oh my gosh, you would love it. Like, you especially would love it. And I was like, okay, I'll definitely listen to it. And you were like, no, don't listen to it. Wait until a good production comes into town and watch that. Yeah, and I was like, okay.
That sounds like me.
That does sound like you.
Yeah. I'm the guy who goes to see something in IMAX in the opening weekend. I'm like, it's got to be the perfect experience. I'm just terrible. I'm sorry I led you astray, Devin. You should have been listening to this music.
Yeah, you should have. This the movie was my introduction to Sweeney as well. I actually saw the movie for the first time in the Bishop Gorman High School girls' dressing room.
Wow. Like on a phone or so, like computer?
On one of our iPads. We propped it up. It was during, what was it? It had to have been during Millie, because there's a big Act 2 break. Yes. It was during Thoroughly Modern Millie. I had listened to some of the songs, obviously, because I had just done God That's Good and stuff like that. But other than that, I really knew nothing about Sweeney other than like the vague plot. And then I walk into the dressing room. It's my Act 2 big break like moment. I have like 45 minutes off stage because I've been kidnapped. And
you're Millie?
I'm Dorothy.
Oh, Dorothy.
Yeah, so I'm in a laundry cart. I'm off stage for quite literally most of Act 2. Which is my favorite way to do a show. I love a good big break.
It's so nice.
There's nothing better than as being an actor than just not having to do anything. Like when you just sit backstage and watch, and like it's antithetical of what you would think. Like, how many lines do I have? All of this, but like,
no, there's nothing better than a big princess break in Act 2.
No.
But so I'm like, I'm sitting back there, and somebody's watching Sweeney Todd, and they're on like by the sea, I want to say is the part of the movie that they're at. And I'm like, oh, I'll sit down and watch it. And I was watching it. And then I almost missed my entrance because I was like, oh my God, this is so good. And then afterwards I was like, I got to go back and watch that whole thing. So
You went in at the right time though.
Yeah,
like the back half of this movie is a lot better than the front half.
Yeah.
It's half because of the stuff that is cut from the first half, in my opinion, but also because Burton goes out of his way to desaturate the colors and to like really make everything just sad at the beginning, essentially.
Yeah.
And then as soon as as soon as the blood starts flowing, Sweeney's passion comes out, right?
Yeah.
Like, and it's, I mean, the blood spurting is insane. Like Burton doesn't have blood in any of his films like this. And it's just fun. Like, yeah. This is why he made the movie, like for that, like that final kind of 30 minutes is what I imagine. Cause like that final scene of like, even, like Sweeney holding his dead wife while his throat is slit. Like,
spoilers.
Spoilers. Oh, Jesus Christ.
I didn't finish it.
Oh no, Devin. This was also my first time seeing this film. I had been hesitant to see it because I thought it was really bad. I think I just had heard enough bad things, or just kind of like, oh, Johnny Depp's not that great as Sweeney. I forget what it was, but I had this stigma. I think I was just being a little elitist too, where I was like, yeah, I prefer the 60s, the 69, London cast or whatever. Like, yeah.
I'm going to say it. There's never been an adaptation of a musical into a movie that has just been good. Like, they've all been either, I really firmly believe that they're all either like atrocious and they get like panned critically, or they're like, this has taken it into a new medium. Like, and I feel like Sweeney didn't go far enough to take it into a new medium, so it got like shoved into the category of bad.
I think you're right.
And I think a little undeservingly, because like there are definitely good things about it.
A bit so, because people just don't know how to receive these types of projects, like you're saying. Because like usually, these are actually two really good examples, because you either, actually stage it, you build sets, and you do it in a whole 3-dimensional way, or you film it more or less like it's a play. Yeah. Like West Side Story, the original West Side Story is shot very much like a stage play.
Yes.
The sets are like huge, and you can see the sound stages, like the corners of it. It's kind of like how the Oklahoma movies were, stuff like that. But it's you just feel the artifice the whole time while you're watching it, because that's what film does. It makes you acutely aware of every detail. But I do think like more movies should try to do something like this, where they bridge the gap. They do something in between. I will say, I think West Side Story, the Steven Spielberg remake that came out last year or 2 years ago, is actually the best movie musical ever made. Like that gets my number one spot.
I haven't seen it.
No worries if you haven't seen it. It kind of came and went, without a lot of fanfare. But he is like the first director, I feel, that had enough visual flair to match Sondheim's sonic flares. And like just really understanding the pace and how to build up hype and anticipation with the music. Yeah, I mean, I do miss the ballads from this a bit. I think
definitely
it's tough. So apparently they were actually going to do something different for this. They had casted what were called gentlemen ghosts, and the idea was that they were going to be the victims of Sweeney, and they were like half doing this narration thing, and then half, just like, around like haunted. And it works so well because, I mean, in the original musical, there are all these great lines about ghosts. Like when Sweeney first sees the beggar woman, that's actually his wife, and like brushes her off. He's like, man, there's ghosts in the street. I can feel the chill of London. And then when he goes into Mrs. Lovett's bakery for the first time, like she's like, oh, you scared me. A customer. I thought you were a ghost. Exactly. It's I think that would have been so good. They even had like Christopher Lee.
I was gonna ask who was cast.
And apparently Sondheim had written some new stuff for it too, but it just never got shot.
Sorry, not me getting so excited about that I was like making out with the microphone.
It's insane, you know. Like I was really like happy to hear that type of thing, but then bummed to hear it didn't happen. But also Johnny Depp, his daughter got sick during the production of this film,
oh, really?
So they had to shut down production for a month.
Oh, wow.
So it's hard to say, you know, what that may have like stopped because, you know, he was in such high demand. I'm sure he had to go film another movie because he was already scheduled.
Yeah.
And those ballads, like, I think you need Sweeney there, even if he's not singing the actual like big terms, you know?
I really want to know what your thoughts on the plot were as a person who has never.
Yeah, I liked it. I thought it was good. I thought I was confused at the end. Maybe it's just because like my screen wasn't good enough or whatever. But at the end, I didn't notice that the beggar woman was who his wife was.
Yeah,
that is confusing.
I saw he like
in the movie.
Yeah,
it's very clear in the stage play.
I bet. Like it would have to be.
Yeah.
It's tough because the beggar women, you know, in theater you can double up on roles and people won't blink, you know, because they're like, oh, that's just the ensemble filling in another spot. His wife must not be in this that much. But in this film, they have to hide her face because they're like, if you see her face and then we show the flashback and you see her face, like
that's
a scene
over.
After, the whole twist is gone.
Yeah, it's a lot more palpable in a stage version of it because you can you look at her face just fully, like you just see the woman and then you see the woman playing another role, and like you said, you assume it's the ensemble, and then it's like at the end when the reveal happens, you're like going back and putting all the pieces together,
right,
in a way that it just doesn't hit in the movie.
It's also so tough because again, of the music that's cut. I mean, the thing that Sondheim does maybe better than anyone else is he creates motifs, and these motifs are inherently linked with the character's emotions. So when you hear a musical idea come back, you are in their head as far as like the emotions go. And that's what makes it even stronger on the songs where like he starts layering in multiple voices on top of each other because you hear the conflicting emotions and feelings. It's so good, but it's you know, like most of the beggar woman's stuff is cut here. He cuts the she has this
she has songs.
She has
so many songs. Is City on Fire in the movie? Sorry, I was listening to the soundtrack.
It's like a truncated version of it.
Okay, because I was listening to the soundtrack on the drive up here, and or I was listening to the cast recording on the or on the drive up here, and I had just watched the movie like a couple days ago, and I was like, I don't remember what's happening where.
Yeah, I think she sings it like in the stage play. It's more of a motif that goes throughout the whole play.
She has this whole bit in the Joanna Quartet that I feel like doesn't happen in the movie, right?
I don't think there's a Joanna Quartet in the movie.
Right?
I don't.
There might be a duet.
No. There is. They actually do a little bit of it.
But it's it's this beautiful 5.5 minute song that's like Sweeney, and if I never see you again, and then
it's after the judge has left and he's like, I'll never see Joanna again. So it's post I'm just gonna kill everyone. But it's a sad contemplative song.
And they did kind of turn it in the movie into a villain moment for him where he was like, and I'll never, and it's very much I love the way it's done in I'm forgetting which recording I'm thinking of, but there's the
one with Patti LuPone.
No, actually, the Angela Lansbury, the original one. Yeah. He's very soft, and he's like, and I'll never see Joanna, and it gets very soft and intense, and it's more of a contemplative moment, and I feel like that kind of gets fucked with in the movie.
And he does have a lot of that back and forth for sure. Going into the one scene where Sweeney just fully has the mental break and is like, I'll kill anyone. Mm-hmm. It is that. It's and I'll never see Joanna. Finish you there. Yeah. Come into the chair, sir. The whiplash is palpable for sure. But I don't think Johnny Depp plays the the sad part, like
he doesn't play like
you
the
know?
softness.
He just plays it like dead inside.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know?
So that's my biggest beef with his portrayal of Sweeney is that Sweeney is, when you watch the stage show, inherently a little bit likable. You're like, why the fuck do I like this guy who's literally a homicidal maniac? But like, because you see his sadness and you see like he goes through a whole range of emotions and like, honestly, like when he's doing the songs with Mrs. Lovett, like you see more, I feel like that Sweeney's like into her, not into her per se, but like that he has like a genuine bond with
see
her.
The playful side of him too.
Yes.
Like, yeah.
And that is just like gone from the movie in such a weird way. Like By the Sea, how he like stares straight ahead and is dead eyed. On one hand, I'm like, that's funny as fuck.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, I'm like, I don't know. I just feel like you miss some of the liking of Sweeney. Like you're watching a villain more than you're watching an anti-hero.
It is interesting because there's definitely productions where Lovett is carrying all the weight.
Oh, certainly.
What's the version with I can't even think of it. It's a concert version, but essentially
the one where Neil Patrick Harris is, what's his name? Toby?
No, it's not that one.
No, because that's the one.
That's just the revival.
That's the revival.
Yeah.
But there's a concert version of it that's bootlegged on YouTube that was the second version of Sweeney that I ever watched.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was anyways, what I was just getting to is the Sweeney was playing it very operatically because they had the New York Philharmonic behind them, and it was very into the music of it all, which is fine, but like there's just so much lost there in the acting, and you're like Lovett was just the only interesting part of that production at that level.
Yeah.
And it was an interesting contrast. I'm like, Depp's doing more than that, but he's not doing exactly that. Because he had never sung before this. He took like vocal lessons. I think he's a little apprehensive to even singing, and you can kind of tell. Like he's a little embarrassed in some of the songs. And another interesting thing is that they did all the vocal recordings before.
Oh.
And usually you would sing on set and then go remaster it later. So they had to make all their acting choices like before they had even seen the sets, the costumes, like anything like that. And it's like, I don't know, especially for like non-singers, like that feels like a really tough environment to come out on top of.
Yeah, because all of a sudden you're lip syncing.
Right.
Like that's where your focus is. That's where it has to be. If you've recorded the audio first and you're not like a live performer, not that they're not live performers, but like in a concert sense, you don't know how to lip sync. And then all of a sudden you're stuck with this stupid ass fucking like track of you that you made 6-8 months ago. And you're like, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what I'm saying right now. Do my lips match? I hate nothing more than lip syncing.
Yeah, it's rough. That's the thing though, is like, I don't like the trend of singing on set that was started by the Les Mis movie
you
and
don't?
Cats, because it's just really, really bad.
Yeah.
Because usually the actors are taking the music and making acting choices that go against the actual musicality, and they're undercutting their own songs. It's almost like there's too much.
They're trying to do it
acting.
different.
Right. And you need a little bit of that, but not too much. It's tough. You got to know the rules and you got to know when to break them. That's like comedy, acting, any of that.
Yeah. And it's not like you can have a live band on set while they're doing
Sometimes
it.
you can.
Well, it's usually in their ear.
Yeah.
They have someone, they have like them somewhere else and they're feeding it in. So
Right. But you still have like that. It's still not the
You're
same.
not there.
Right?
You're not in the space.
Yeah.
I will say, one time during COVID, I did a filmed version of a musical and with like my college. And I had to do this like 10-minute monologue. It was the longest monologue I've ever had to do. And they were like, oh, we're going to record the audio live. And I was like, okay, awesome. Great. And then they hit me back a week later and said the audio didn't come out and you have to ADR the entirety of that monologue. And I will tell you guys, it is 12 minutes long, and not knowing that you're going to ADR something before you do it means that you might do stuff where you're like, I'm like looking out the window for part of it and I'm like watching people on the street and I go, she's going to run right into that guy. And like, I did not make my mouth clear and I did not like make my enunciation good. So I had to do like, that's like why I remember that part, because I was like, she's going to run right into that guy. And I had to do that in that like exact rhythm and that like same pitch to match it, like 40 times. I was just like, she's gonna run right into that guy. And they were like, not quite, do it again. And I was like, she's gonna run right into that guy. And they were like, oh, closer. And I was like, she's gonna run right into that guy. And they were like, almost there. I swear to God, you guys, I spent an entire day in the ADR booth for this filmed fucking musical for this 12-minute monologue where I'm just talking straight. Like I'm just talking. It's just me and no silence, because the way they directed it was just like, keep going. You're neurotic. You're crazy. Keep going, because they'd seen me in Company. And, and they were like, certainly she can do this. And so it was just this long ass monologue. So I will say I would prefer capturing audio on set to having to do it after the fact, not knowing that you're not capturing the audio.
That's insane. Yeah, that's a literal nightmare. Okay, so just going over the plot real quick for anyone that maybe didn't watch, doesn't know. Sweeney Todd. Okay, well, let's say this. Originally, Sweeney Todd was based on a Penny Dreadful, written in the 1850s, and he was just a full sociopath, like just born a killer, gonna kill forever. Really, no more nuance beyond that. There was a play in that Sondheim had actually seen a few years before writing this that gave Sweeney a backstory, and he kind of basically adapted that version of Sweeney. And the backstory goes that Sweeney had a loving family, and then Judge Turpin and Beadle Bamford, basically a beadle is a church official,
he's like the law for the church,
law
right?
for the church essentially. And so it's like it's church and state, basically conniving together. They send Sweeney away to Australia into one of their jails for life. And then they basically try to take his wife for themselves, and she's resisting them for all this time. Eventually they get the wife. They trick the wife into coming to a party at the house. It's like a masquerade. And Judge
she goes
Turpin,
to plead for Sweeney's freedom.
That's it.
Yeah.
And the judge rapes her in the middle of a masquerade party
And drugs her ?
I think so.
It's implied.
Yeah, it's tough. And then after that, it's like she poisons herself or something, and then she's basically a vegetable for a couple months, and then she just becomes this beggar woman in this weird mental state. Sweeney basically comes back, and he has no idea what's happened since he's been gone. The judge takes his daughter and raises her as his own. Sweeney's just basically coming back to his old digs and just trying to figure out what happened. Mrs. Levitt kind of leads him astray, lies about what
totally
was going on.
lies, because she literally knows everything. She knows that the beggar woman is Sweeney's wife. She knows that she knows who he is immediately. And then she knows that he's come back to look for the wife. And she's like, I always thought you were kind of sexy. I'm not going to tell you that your wife is standing right outside. She's dead. And that's just
it's so good though. Even in the writing of the songs, there's a barber and his wife, and she was beautiful. That's how Sweeney puts it. And then when Miss Lovett is retelling it, there's a barber and his wife, and he was beautiful.
Yeah.
And it's just when you first hear it, you probably don't put together that she's crushing on him, because you're just it's a musical reprieve. But every musical idea has a meaning in this.
which is the beauty of Sondheim.
Absolutely.
Love that, man.
Well, and it's in this book I've got here, look, I made a hat. It's annotated lyrics for all of his songs.
Wait, can I borrow that?
Yeah, there's two editions. Look, I made a hat and finishing the hat.
You actually have.
I had finishing the hat. Damn it, man! I always mix them up. So sad. So sad. I don't know what book this is, dude. I should have held it upside down.
Yeah.
But Sondheim has a couple principles for writing that he outlines in here. Less is more. God is in the details. Content dictates form. Which is always really interesting because, in the ballad here at the beginning, all the rhyming is done around the word Sweeney Todd, because there's not really a lot you can rhyme with Sweeney itself. So he kind of will front load Sweeney and then offload the rhyme to the second half, or vice versa.
Yeah.
And it's just really interesting to see the way like he goes about writing a song, just about, okay, it's a mathematical equation of like, what can I rhyme with what else is going on here? It's pretty good stuff. But and even like less is more is like so key to everything here, because it's why he can use one motif so many times and it just gains all this meaning through context. It's also why I think like Company on the other end is so accessible, because like it talks about relationships, but it talks about it in such a broad manner that it can feel applicable to any one person that's viewing it. Yeah, it's good stuff. And it's just a bit of that nuance that you miss when it's cut out.
Yeah.
There's like another cut stuff. Most of the cut stuff in the first act really has to do with Joanna. And
Which doesn't then serve when all of a sudden his like sole focus is Joanna, and he's like, fuck.
And the way they had phrased it, at least in the featurettes I watched, was like they were trying to hone in only on Sweeney's story and kind of like taking out the side characters and, you know, the ensemble of London, if you will. But Joanna is so important to Sweeney, like intrinsically. I don't know why you get rid of it. Like, and I think the passion of the young love is kind of what pushes you through the first act, like pretty well.
And it's not present in the movie.
No.
I mean,
Yeah, I would have loved to have seen that the whole time. Like when he went to Bedlam to grab her, I was like, I think she's gonna be thrilled. Like,
no, for real.
like I think she wants to go. She'll be happy to be out. Yeah, but I don't know if she wants to run away with him.
Well, and even in the stage play, that's a question. You know, is like, is Joanna really in love with him? Is this just like this is her one way out? It feels genuine enough. It just also feels like young love. Like she hasn't been appreciated by someone her age before.
Yeah.
And so she's kind of leaping at that. Especially compared to the judge, who's trying to force himself on her.
Yeah.
Just like, terrible.
I will say, movie Judge Turpin is one of my favorite, like,
so good
versions of like just what they choose to keep for his character and what they like kind of let go of. I honestly think serves, because the judge in the stage version, I feel like can get a little long. It can get a little wordy.
Definitely.
Sometimes I'm like, okay, I get it. Like, your motive has been made clear. You want to fuck Joanna. Beginning and end. Like, you don't need to spend 8 million songs about it. And so I feel like, not 8 million, but you know, I feel like sometimes, although I think that a lot of the stuff that was cut in the movie was unfortunate that it got cut, I do think that the judge's character specifically honestly works better in the movie for me.
Yeah, I mean, you also have Alan Rickman in here.
Yeah.
It's impossible.
It's just going to give like a stellar
Talk about less is more, right? Too. Like with
Yeah.
anything he does, it's just going to be so just like pulled back in a beautiful way, which I wonder if that's why that worked so well, is because of Alan.
Yeah, it's totally.
It's a good cast. Like outside,
it's a solid.
like I really feel like the leads are the only like place you could, you know, kind of get iffy with.
Yeah.
But they even do pretty good for this version. I think it's interesting because this doesn't feel like the definitive Sweeney Todd movie. It kind of just feels like From the Mind of Tim Burton.
Yes.
So it's like you can kind of, I feel like we could still have a Sweeney adaptation in 10 years.
I completely agree.
Yeah.
You know, like
I hope
like,
we do. I hope we do actually sooner than that, because I want to see Josh Groban and Annalee Ashford play it for the screen.
Yo, I mean, I listened to a couple of the songs from that new recording, and it's really great.
Yeah.
Yeah. Groban's good.
Annalee Ashford, I would die for her. I would.
Oh yeah.
I just love her in everything she's ever done.
What else she
She was in Sunday in the Park with George.
Nice.
She was in Legally Blonde. She was one of the oh my God, Elle, those girls. She's one of the Greek chorus. And then why can't I think of Sylvia? Sylvia is about a dog, but the dog is played by a human woman.
So it's kind of like Wilfred, like the show.
Yeah, kind of.
That's so fun.
It's literally just about a dog and the couple that adopts her.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Comedy or drama?
Comedy.
Fun.
And she was so good in it. I watched, I did not watch a bootleg because that's illegal.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course.
You watched the slime tutorial.
Yeah, I did. I watched the slime tutorial.
I'm like, I was gonna say Sacha Baron Cohen as Pierre is like a revelation.
Incredible.
It's like, yeah, I mean, it's already like a really funny role if you do it right, but I feel like there's a lot of productions where, I don't know, it's just a weirdo and not exactly someone bringing the comedy. But he brings like the sliminess. This was the next thing he did after Borat, which is insane.
No, it wasn't. Was it really?
I kid you not. Like,
Wow.
like the movie had come out and they cast him in this. Like, he asked to be in it.
My main takeaway from that was immediately when he was on screen, I just thought of Adam Sandler as Opera Man.
Oh my God.
It was like dead on.
Oh my God. Why is that so real?
It's like,
good.
I would not be shocked if like Borat was like, or if Sasha was like, all right. Yeah.
That would have been such a good pull too. Like, cause the Sandman could have done it.
I looked up, and I didn't go deeper into it, but I looked up to see if anybody else had like pulled that, you know, and like put it online, be like, oh my God, these two. And I looked up like Opera Man, Sweeney Todd, something like that. And there were some like articles that came up that didn't have Adam Sandler crossed out and were about the Sweeney Todd movie.
Yeah,
So
it's a problem because this is the most operatic of all Sondheim's productions. So maybe it was like, yeah, we got opera, but we don't have man.
We don't have man.
Like,
That's possible.
Yeah.
But it was like there was like I saw like Adam Sandler in there, so there might have been something. I don't know.
Might not
But
be alone.
I will dive deeper tonight.
One is alone.
It would be incredible if that was like a secret movie history for this, where like he was the alternate casting, but he turned it down, because that's what happened in
God.
Glorious Bastards. He was supposed to play the Bear Jew, who's like the guy. It's played by Eli Roth in the film, but he's got like a big baseball bat and he just smacks a dude in the head. But it just would have been really funny, like they hype him up for like 5 minutes before you see him, and then Sandler walks out. That would have killed.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would have been great.
Sandler with that like the French mustache.
Oh my God.
I know. But once you got into like him doing other stuff, like what? Because he's a character playing a character, right? When he's doing the Italian guy, and so when he's just the normal character, I'm like, oh, okay, that's why they gave it to Sasha instead of the Sandman. You know,
I think it's why Sasha works so well though, because he it's what works so well though, because like Sasha is such a plain normal dude. Like you would never assume it because of the characters he always has. But it's interesting though. This probably got him the role for Les Mis.
Oh, certainly.
Like right after.
Certainly,
right?
yes.
He's what's the Master of the House guy and
Thénardier.
Yes.
Thénardier. Yeah.
Yeah.
And doesn't Helena come back too for that as his wife?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just insane
Master
great
of
pull.
the House.
We did that in Gales.
Already we're
did.
we're gonna know.
A little
Actually-
spring
Yeah,
spectacular.
one of my directing numbers was Master of the House.
Stop.
The other one was You Can Drive a Person Crazy. from the company.
You can drive a person crazy. Wait, I remember that.
Yeah.
I remember watching that, but I don't remember Master of the House. Oh, I also would like to say, I didn't bring this up earlier. When we did God That's Good, we had to cut all the killing people stuff.
What?
No.
How?
Wait.
How'd you even do it?
Guys, it was just a number about pie. So I was like so happy because I was like the main character of that song. Like there was nobody else, because we literally didn't have a Sweeney. Because Sweeney's only bit in that is, excuse me, psst, dear, see to the customers. And so I will say though, we rehearsed it for like a week with that. And August, do you guys remember August Ricardo?
I do.
August was cast to play after your time. August was cast to play Sweeney, and then Ferrante cut it like after we had already started with that, which was the most insane shit, because I felt so bad, but also I was like, great, so now I don't have to do the it's gorgeous, and I just get to do like my nice to see you, dearie. Like I just get to do my shit. And so that's, yes, sidebar, but we cut all the killing people stuff when we did the Sweeney Todd
That's
song.
so fun.
There was no like the none of that.
I want to know what the because the Into the Woods Junior is one of my favorite kid versions of a show because they just cut off the second half entirely. And but if you attempted to make this PG,
Sweeney?
it
would be God. That's
impossible.
good. Just the pie part.
Yeah. Well, and Joanna. Maybe Greenfinch and
it would go
Leonard.
attend the tale of Sweeney Todd,
and then that's it.
What happened next? Well, that's the play, and it's done now.
Yeah.
Actually, there's nothing next.
You could do Pirelli's number. To shave all the face. You could do. What else could you do in PG Sweeney? You could do By the Sea, but you couldn't do all of By the Sea because she says my rumpled bed sheets made legitimate or whatever she says. I forget the exact phrasing. So she does talk about. Can we? The fact that it is canon confirmed that Sweeney and Lovett are fucking.
Is it? Is
She
that
says-
so it's in the lyrics?
There's a lyric of By the Sea where she talks about, it's at the end, she's talking about getting married. And then she goes, my rumpled bedding legitimized. That's what the line is. She goes, my rumpled bedding legitimized. And no one talks about it, but she is at least insinuating that they are sleeping together or they have. Because she's saying that she wants to get married so that she can be legitimized for her sheets.
Yeah, but also I don't know, is that even part of the fantasy?
It could be. It could be.
Those words becoming real.
Mm-hmm.
Because I do wonder. It's so much of this.
I personally
is,
think they were
Sweeney using Mrs. Lovett, in some ways, but also her using him. He doesn't know really what's going on. I feel like he's all reactionary.
Yeah.
But also it's hard for me to buy the love onto her because he feels so hollow. Inside.
I don't think that they are into each other. Well, I think she's into him.
Oh, yeah.
And I think she probably came on to him and he was like, ugh.
Yeah, she's around.
She's
He's
around.
a guy.
He's a guy.
I think he is getting. I think he gets a rise out of the killing.
Yeah.
And when she becomes a part of it,
I think there might be some
the
sexual.
metaphor there. Is that
That's
we
true,
can
yeah.
have fun here together. If you keep playing on this rule book.
Sweeney's into that kind of shit.
Yeah.
For sure.
They're in bed. He's pulling out his razor. She's yeah.
I did when he first pulled out the razor in the movie. I totally thought he was gonna make out with it.
Gorgeous.
He's just staring at, and I really liked that.
It's a love song.
It was
yeah.
Well,
it's such a great one because he's singing to the blade, and Mrs.
I'm your
Lovett
friend
is singing
too,
to
Mr.
him.
Todd.
Yeah.
That to me is such a honestly heart-wrenching line when she goes, I'm your friend too, Mr. Todd. It's damn, you really are being replaced by this piece of metal.
She's down bad.
Yeah.
And at the end of the song too, isn't he get out? I need to be alone with this thing.
No, for real.
There's an interesting one. So he says in the movie here, he says my arm is complete again. When he holds the blade up.
Very Edward Scissorhands vibes I got from that.
That's interesting.
With that line,
Johnny with a blade at the end of his hand,
saying my arm is complete now.
That's great. But the line is my right arm is complete again. They changed it in the original because Lon Chaney was left-handed, and he held the razor in his left hand. But it's really interesting that I don't know, maybe Tim Burton had also just seen the original or had that in his head. But it's feels like a little flub that you're oh, someone should have picked up on that because it's wordplay.
Where was the dramaturg?
Yeah, where's the dramaturg?
Me every time I watch a movie musical. Where is the dramaturg?
Straight up. Well, Sondheim was on set.
Yeah.
I mean, he had casting approval for Mrs. Lovett.
He has casting, or he did when he was alive. I think he had casting approval for every single.
Yeah, he should.
Major revival of his stuff because I know he was in the casting room for Into the Woods.
And
the most recent one.
Yeah. You just need it. Have you ever seen the videos of Sondheim working with actors?
Yeah.
I mean, those are just
so great.
Insane.
Yeah. I think you can see him on the 6 by Sondheim documentary, and then the other ones are just on YouTube, kind of hanging around. But yeah, he like, and I mean, let me pull another the company original cast recording. When he talks to the actors in that is insane. Like, he's a better director than probably a lot of the directors who have actually staged a lot of his stuff.
Yeah.
Hal Prince besides, Okay. Anyway, so what else we got here? I was going to say one of my favorite songs that's cut here is the full version of Kiss Me and Ladies and Their Sensitivities. It's this back and forth. Man, how would you even describe it? You know the song I'm talking about?
Yeah.
It was fully cut.
It's the first half's fully cut, so the refrain is cut from Ladies and Their Sensitivities. It's one of those layering parts where essentially Joanne's out of the house I cannot think of his name. Nick? Is that
the sailor?
The sailor?
Played by Jamie Campbell Bower in his feature film debut. And then he went on to be in Twilight.
Yep.
And then he went on after Twilight to be in The Mortal Instruments, got ripped a new one, and disappeared for a couple of years.
He's good though.
He is.
I think he's really good as Nick.
He is. It is Nick, right?
Let's go with it.
You want me to Google?
We can ADR this later. My phone's recording me, so I can't check.
I'm looking.
Oh wait, I can just check my lyrics.
I feel you.
It's Anthony.
Why did I think it was Nick? Joanna.
Okay.
Oh, and for those who weren't familiar with any of the semi-niche references I made, if you're not a twihard, he was also Vecna in the recent season of Stranger Things. That's what else. That's what Jamie Campbell Bower is doing right now.
That's his biggest probably thing. So the song that I love that is cut is basically Anthony is in Joanna's room hanging out with her, and they're planning her escape while the judge and Beetle are going to Sweeney's shop. Yeah. And it makes perfect sense to layer both of these songs on because you can see the play the events happening at the same time. Mm-hmm. It's a purely theater convention though.
Yeah.
It wouldn't have worked harder to do. But
you want to split screen it?
Brian De Palma would have done it. That way.
He would have gotten away with it. Yeah, that's true. That's true.
It's my favorite musical moment of the show, which is where Joanna goes, "I don't even know your name," and then the other guys are just singing about Sweeney Todd, and they go Todd, and then he goes Anthony, and another Todd, and then she's like Anthony, and she freaks out, and it's a full culmination of all the musical ideas, and then it just blows up again, and they all go back into the refrains. It's so good. It's chilling.
It's that's so incredible. Good. Yeah.
I will say though, my favorite musical moment is it is not actually my favorite musical moment from the show, but it is, I think, one of the funniest because I love Sondheim does this thing where he'll just do nonsense lyrics for the ensemble.
Oh yeah.
That are just words selected from throughout the rest of the song. He does this a lot, but it's specifically in God That's Good. It's so funny because they go, God, that's good. That is D. Have you licious ever tasted? Smell such. Oh, what more? That's pie's good.
It makes so much sense though. It's almost like it's encoded.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And the decoding of it is the other melodies that it's being paired with.
Exactly.
I love that.
No, it's so good. And learning that for the when we did God That's Good, that will always be burned into my brain because everybody was like, this is so stupid. And I was like, shut up.
You're it's about the effect when it all comes together.
They are so into the food, they can't talk right. That's how much they like eting people.
Also though, Sondheim uses voices as instruments.
Yes, which I love.
That's a huge part of his his ethos. But
write me as a violin, Steve.
Yep. Well, that's why I love the frogs so much is because all the frog noises are just fully the ensemble. It's so fun.
It's really well done too, guys. Come on,
everybody check out the frogs.
Watch the frogs.
You.
Listen to the frogs. Watch the frogs if you can watch.
It's watchable, right? Or do you think that's
there's a rip.
Yeah.
It's
illegally
it's
watchable,
an
but
HD
it's watchable.
Quarter, like it was a 2002 production, I think.
Yeah.
So
And does the rip that you're aware of have Chris Kattan, or does it have what's his name? I'm blanking on his name. The guy who plays.
I think it has Chris Kattan because it's a preview.
Okay, that's what I thought.
It's a preview rip.
Yeah.
Before it became Roger Bard.
Roger Bard. Yes.
But still, Nathan Lane. Oh man.
Okay, I might have to watch this.
The frogs is like really good but really bad.
Have you heard?
I've heard some of the songs, but I've never watched.
So it was originally staged in the Juilliard swimming pool.
I did.
It had
I've
Meryl
heard.
Streep in the cast in the ensemble. Like it's just it's a crazy thing that
That's
happened.
insane.
As well as a few other like big names.
Yeah,
too.
like big Broadway names for sure. But it was like a one-act musical, and then Nathan Lane asked Sondheim to write more songs for it because this was post-form, so I feel like they had like a working relationship. Nathan Lane also tried to get Sondheim to write a musical adaptation of Being There, which is like a really popular comedy from like the 70s or 80s. It probably wouldn't have worked.
No.
It was just why Sondheim turned it down.
Yeah.
I think he said the main character is like a cipher, which wouldn't work for the audience. But yeah. Anyways, but I think the Frogs has like some back half issues, but I think if someone brought it back down into 90 minutes, it would be perfect.
Yeah, you could really make like a good show out of.
From what I've heard of Frogs, it has some good moments.
Come on,
It has
a
some great
12-minute aquatic ballet. Not bad. I'm like, we're running long. So,
let's.
But, any final thoughts on Sweeney? Or are we like, what does it feel like we haven't hit? So you guys, I mean, Pretty Women is a very big scene. Part of why I love that ladies and their sensitivities number is because it leads directly into Pretty Woman.
Yeah.
Because it's so full, hearing like four voices going off. When you get to the stripped down simplicity of Pretty Women, that also hits just as hard.
True.
But for different reasons. And so good. I think Pretty Women is maybe like one of the heights of this version.
Yes, absolutely.
I think it's where the vision comes.
My ward is my favorite part of that. Just him going, my ward.
Yeah, it's definitely memeable. Yeah.
It's interesting because like Pretty Woman gets interrupted by a song in the musical, and in this version it's just dialogue. But it's Anthony singing "Joanne will marry me Sunday." Everything's set.
Sunday.
Yeah. It's just another motif. He just comes in with the motif, and then Judge Turpin hears the motif, and it's like, I knew it.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's brilliant.
It's so good. And I love the like thing that Sondheim does where he'll interrupt a song with a song. Like that's
it's great. Yeah.
It's so good. It's so good. You think that the song is going to come to its conclusion, and then it never does, and you just have to live with that.
Ugh. But that's like, that's life. Not everything resolves.
Yeah.
Which
I love.
In a satisfying way. So good. Have a Little Priest, I feel like leaves a little to be desired in this version.
It's one of my least favorite parts of the movie, and it's crazy.
They're just pointing out the window, and they're like at the figures, which the fun part of the song is that they're pointing to the pies where the people have been, made into pies. Like, I don't want to see the human version of them.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's one of those like classic, this is why you don't turn something into a movie, because like just showing the literal thing is so much less effective than the theatricality of it. I'm like, that's pretty much all I have. When Sweeney goes into like his full bloodlust and starts killing everyone, there's a pretty good sequence with his chair. He's like, they're throwing bodies down, and like every body when it drops into the basement like smacks into
like
the floor.
It's like a thud.
Yeah, like you hear like their skull crack.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, it's brutal. And then like Sweeney, even in that last act, he's got this like this white streak of hair in this design, which is maybe the best Sweeney design of any of them. You got to give it to Burton for that.
Yeah.
And the white strip is covered in red. in the final like 30 minutes. It's so good. And even like it's great because he has these bloodlines on his head that you could tell were just kind of like drawn with a brush, but it's also like the pattern it would look like if you slashed it and it just sprayed like in a straight line on him.
Yeah.
So it kind of embraces that theatricality of it, like the stupidness of it, but in a fun way too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I don't think I don't know. What do you guys overall? Does this work for you? Do you would you watch it again? Would you recommend it? Like,
I have watched it multiple times.
okay. I mean, yeah, I definitely liked it more than I thought I would, and I feel like I could revisit this without cringing through the whole thing.
Yeah, me revisiting it is more of like I'm in the mood to watch a musical and I don't want to put too much effort into it, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, I like it in a way that it like feels very nostalgic to me because it's how I discovered Sweeney, and it's how I like, honestly, part of like a big reason that I got into Sondheim. However, like when you hold it up against any other adaptation of Sweeney, or not adaptation, but any other version, it doesn't gel, you know?
Well, it's tough too. That original production, they literally got a steam whistle, like an actual steam whistle from the industrial era.
Wow.
And they start to play with it.
Yeah.
And like there's other parts where like the music and the actor singing like perfectly blends into the pitch that the steam whistle is at.
It's awesome.
But like it is to have a steam whistle go off in the room you're in has got to be insane. They literally had to like tone it down because it was deafening the actors like on stage.
Yeah.
Like it was way too
Wow.
much. Yeah, and then there's a fun part at the end where they walk off stage and they slam the door, and like that is like a statement that like feels hard to replicate in film as well. But again, Burton has that great final stage, that's final picture of Sweeney holding his dead wife.
Yeah.
That
he killed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, which is tragic. Tragique. Doesn't he kill Joanna in the play version, or does she get away? I thought
she gets away.
Okay, I think I was just misremembering it when I was going through it this time, because Joanna is like hiding in the chair when the judge finally comes back the second time and he kills him. Or she's hiding in the room.
I'm looking. No, she's nearly murdered by her father when he discovers her. She survives when Mrs. Lovett screams in the basement bakehouse, distracting Todd and allowing her to escape.
That's right. Yeah, they just changed the sequence of events a bit here.
Yeah.
And where he just lets her go.
Yeah.
Which
It was because of the scream though.
Was it because of the scream?
Yeah. She screamed and then he was like, all right,
forget
go.
my face.
And then he let her go.
Right.
So yeah, I guess it would have been better if like the scream happened and then she was like, I'm gonna escape. You know, like if yeah. I liked it. I thought it was good. I really liked the story of it too, especially near the end. I think there were a lot of moments where like it had me where I was like, ooh, I hope the judge doesn't walk in right now, you know, because those loaded guns are there waiting. And that was really fun, I think.
Yeah, it is really tightly plotted too. Like, when you think about it, it's only like 5 or 6 characters really going at it.
Mm-hmm.
I was a little disappointed by the lack of like signature Sondheim things kind of that we talked about. Like I was hoping to hear more motifs. Like I thought we would hear more melodies stacked on top of each other, and there wasn't much of it. So it did leave me being like, I guess I got to listen to the actual version because I know that exists.
Exactly.
You're not going to convince me otherwise.
I'm glad I finally forced you to watch it after telling you not to watch it.
I know.
Now you can get into this world and get caught up with us. All right. Well, cool. We'll take a little break. We'll come back with Company.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Welcome back, everybody. We are talking about Company, directed by Lonnie Price. This is the '06 revival, as previously mentioned. Ran for most of '07. I don't know if it won any Tonys. I probably should have looked that up. But I feel like this production, really the star of it is Raul Esparza, right?
By far.
I mean, he's like the man.
Yeah.
Company, if you don't know, is about Bobby, or Robert, the main character.
Bobby.
It's essentially it's a non-linear play because none of these events necessarily take place after one or another.
I will say, I think for the next however long we're recording this podcast, I'm just going to be in the background going, Bobby,
you have
Bobby.
to. Just to
That's
set
what
the
they
mood.
do in the musical, so it'll work.
Bobby.
It works so well too, though, because it sets everything as taking place inside of Bobby's head, essentially.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And there's this framing device at the beginning and end of each act, which is his 35th birthday party. But essentially, we're going into the monotony of his life, the dating scene, even the things people are expecting of him and projecting onto him. And so like 35 is this perfect age where they like, he's having a surprise party. They say it at the beginning, like, he's like, how many times do you get to turn 35? 11. And it's just like, you can tell he's just in this crush, essentially, where everything's coming down. I wonder what your take is on like what exactly is going on here. Cause like plot wise or what the meaning is. Cause there's a lot of readings of this. Some people think that Bobby kills himself at the end of the show.
That's my favorite take on it, honestly.
Really?
Yeah. Especially with like the way that like this one is played out, where it's like he blows out the candles at the end. It almost feels like blowing out the candles on his life. And then it's just like the hard cut there. I think we've talked about this
I know.
before,
I think we're opposed because I
Yeah.
think of it in the fully opposite way of just like he's unable to blow out the candles the whole show because he's unable to make a wish and even know what he wants, to the point that like, yeah, you know, it's stopping him from achieving what he wants to get. But then at the end, he's finally able to accept that and actually blow out the candles. But I think your reading is just as valid.
Yeah, no, they definitely are equally
especially
valid.
because being alive is such a harrowing number that like, again, it's the simplicity of Sondheim. I mean, the words being alive going over and over again, and he's just contemplating whether it is worth it or not, because essentially being alone is not being alive. So he either has to be with someone or be nothing is the idea.
Yeah.
Ugh, which even if he is residing to being single is its own form of like, you know, you could view it as a suicide in a way, right?
Yeah,
He's
yeah.
killing himself off from love and like accepting those
That's
things.
true.
It's also, this is a really interesting one because Sondheim as a person was a very private person. He didn't come out as homosexual until he was 40, which was like when this play came out in 1970. So this musical is all about the you know, the changing of culture from 1969 into the 70s. And it's kind of a nice encapsulation of it, like the idea that like the traditional marriage was kind of falling apart in that way, where people were just starting to think about the family life in a different way and the worth of it all. I mean, homosexuality was still like seen as like a mental disease at this point. And like even Sondheim was like, I think he was going to like psychotherapy. 'Cause he was dating girls like in his like 30s and stuff.
Whoa.
Like very much just not coming to terms with this. And he really didn't find like love in his life until like a much later point. I think it was in the 90s that he finally had a long-term relationship like with a man, and then he got married in the 2010s. But he talked about with the show, with making it, that like he had never been in a serious relationship, so he had to go like to one of his friends who had been divorced and ask her like what is it like what are these things, am I hitting the right bases?
Which is crazy because like the song like Little Things, for example, you would never think that had been written by somebody who had never been in a relationship.
Right?
Yeah.
Like the nuance of that song and so many of the songs, like Side by Side by Side, there are so many songs that it's like, this is what being in a less than perfect relationship looks like.
Right.
Yeah, even Sorry Grateful too.
Yeah.
Where it's like, how do you write that without being in a long-term relationship? I mean,
Yeah.
let alone a marriage. It's so impressive.
Exactly. He's able to get the lonely angle of it throughout, though.
Yeah.
You know, that's why Marry Me a Little and Someone Is Waiting hit so hard. I mean, again, the simplicity of Someone Is Waiting. The whole song is just somebody is waiting, wait for me.
Yeah.
Like just the
Don't give up.
idea that
Yeah.
there is
Yeah.
someone out there for you, and then also wait a little longer for me because I know you're there.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I was listening to one of the renditions on YouTube, like of the Broadway cast, the revival, and like I was like I just started crying during that song because like I've been listening to this for like a full week and just contemplating.
Yeah.
and,
Yeah.
you know, it just gains weight as you do, but like there's so many of these numbers that are they really hit you.
Yeah.
Something about the way you said that just now made me think for the first time that wait for me isn't him saying, wait for me to meet you and like wait for us to meet, but instead is him saying, wait for me to be ready.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had never
I've never thought about that.
before.
That's a hot take.
I feel that. Definitely feel that. I know, dude. It's good.
Damn.
Just dropping bombshells here.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Sammy, you've been in a production of this,
I have,
right? I
yeah.
just have to bring it up. So you played Amy.
I did play Amy.
Yeah.
And that means I approach this show very weirdly because I always look at shows from if you ask me what a show is about, I will always tell you, like if I've been in it, I will always tell you from that character's perspective.
Oh,
like,
that's great.
yeah. Like,
So I really want to know what Company is about now.
So Company is from Amy's perspective. Company is about finding a way to help your friend when you can't help yourself. Like is the way I think that Amy sees that, is very much like helping, like bringing up those around you when you feel like your own life is falling apart is a huge part of Amy.
So good.
And is a huge part of her character and is massively how I think of the show. I view it very much from, and that's weird because Amy's like, you know, obviously not the main character, though she is one of the
Definitely
relevant
the bigger,
characters.
yeah.
She's not the like focus of the show. So how do you like take that kind of how do you take an inactive viewpoint and make it an active viewpoint? And that's the viewpoint that I found through it, is like that learning how to how to help others when you can't help yourself, and how to be there for somebody when you are falling apart, and how like dissatisfaction in some things is almost better than satisfaction in everything because there's more to lose.
Wow. Yeah.
Like, I definitely think that Amy compromises for Paul, but I think that that's like, she is better about that than if she found somebody, because Amy's going to find a problem in everything. And I think that's human nature, is to find a problem in everything. Mm-hmm. And so there's such a level of like, I know what these problems are. I'm comfortable with these problems, and they are the ones that I'm going to keep.
I mean, I think of you always are what you always were, which has nothing to do with her.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, grateful, which is that exact thing. It's
Yeah.
like, you know, it's both things. It's like you are so tied up in the relationship, but you're still gonna be you. Like at the end of the day,
Yeah.
It's I also think that reading works for Bobby though.
Yeah, it does.
Because
That's the
Bobby
thing.
can't help himself.
Especially
but
with
is the best friend to everyone
side by
else
side by
in the
side
show.
is about that, is that Bobby can't help himself, but he's like the buffer for
Yeah.
every single one of
what
his
would
friends.
we do without you? Like that's
Yes.
Seriously.
perfectly.
Yeah.
Ugh, that's so great. I mean, that is the thing, is like he is he's going through all these different relationships for a reason, right? There's a lesson to be learned in every scenario. Like I love even in the back half of the show where I forget the character's name, but it's the girl who sings Another 100 People.
Marta.
And you go from like a scene with Marta where like the friends are just talking about like how young she is and like, oh, that must be fun. Just kind of like being very dismissive of her. And then it goes straight into his scene with Joanne. And like, it's just the edges of like, here's a young girl, here's an old girl. Joanne even says it in that scene, old girl. Joanne even says it like, you know, we're in this middle age of being too old for the young people and too young for the old people.
Yeah, we're the generation gap.
Right. So good. Like, but yeah, the push and pull, like he doesn't want to be Joanne because, you know, she resents every marriage she's in, but she's so insecure about herself that she needs to be in a marriage. And he's like, that's a worst case scenario where like, I'm getting nothing out of it, but like I'm here going through the motions. And then another worst case, with Marta, like just someone he's not going to connect to because they're in a fully different mind space culturally.
Yeah.
Like she is of the hippie generation that's going to be pushing past. Like there's no way he's going to get that.
Yeah, their buttholes are vastly different.
Yes.
Vastly different. It is interesting what holds up and what doesn't. Like this doesn't feel like something that was written in the 70s all the time. I think it still feels pretty modern. But when you know when it was made, all of a sudden it starts to click. It makes sense.
Yeah.
Like even it's not Talk of God or The Decade Ahead that reminds you
to get through the worst.
Through the worst. Yeah. That's all about the Cold War and just being scared of like what's going to happen with the future. And there's a really good alternate line for that one.
The little things, the little things, the little things.
The little things. The little things you do together is maybe like the best. Like you know, it's the second song that comes in.
Yeah,
and it sets the tone for the show so well.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, that song is so fun to do right after the opening song because like the opening song is so everybody's on their own track, and then little things you're so together. You're all just like on the same path, and we're all doing the same thing, and it's like so fun to kind of bond with the cast in that moment.
I love the opening number though because it's like so Hal Prince had the idea to call it Company and like insisted like, okay, the opening song should be the whole company singing a song called Company, and Sondheim's there like, fuck, how do you rhyme company?
Yeah, you know? And you don't. Like, you do it with yourself.
Exactly, but that's again, you know, content dictating form, right? There's even moments like at the end, we love you. The love is held out for like 20 seconds.
Yes.
Like it's insane.
It's like so many counts. I want to say it's like 24 counts. It's just like, we love. Like we
it just
killed ourselves every time. We would all be like, okay.
But the whole reason that exists is because the choreographer wanted to get everyone from one position into a straight line on the stairs.
Yeah.
And it's like, so he just rewrote it to fit. Like he's like, okay, what can they do, you know, that's not like fast words because everyone's got to run and do this. Like, I got 20 seconds to fill. And then,
and also it's solid
one of my
that
favorite parts of the song. Like,
it's solid that it crescendos too, because then like, you know, people can drop out at the beginning, run, and then come back in, you know, like
there's tons of drop in and out.
It's so, yeah. I will say this is one of the shows that I think Sondheim writes people the most like instruments.
Yeah.
Like there are, I mean, especially from a single performer track, I was at the top and the bottom of my range during this. And it was like, those were the written notes for Amy. Like Amy does the high part of the company. And she also does the poor baby, the lowest harmony. So she goes, here where the only tenderness he's ever known, poor baby. And it's like insane. Like, why would you do that to a person?
Sounds so good though.
Sondheim is so masochistic.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if you've heard Merrily We Roll Along.
Yeah.
So Jason Alexander is in that before he was anybody. And he was like, everybody in the show, they were all kids. That was the whole idea, is like cast 18-year-olds. And so Sondheim was like, hey, is there anything that I should know about your voice when I'm writing? And Jason Alexander's like, yeah, I'm not too great with halftones. And so the next day, Sondheim shows up and gives Jason Alexander a song. And he's like, Jason is like, no, I think you misunderstood me. I said I'm not good with half tones. This is all half tones.
Yeah.
And Sondheim was like, great, now you can grow.
Dude, that's why I think he gave Amy such a hard vocal track, is because the original Amy was like not as much of a singer as she was a talk singer.
Yeah.
And I think that's why Amy has the like worst vocal track in the show. And I'm pretty sure it's because Sondheim was like, this can be a learning experience.
Wow.
And like perpetually Amy's who are cast find themselves unable to do like both ends.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's insane because like why? Why would you do that?
It's wild too because Joanne is such a sing or a speak songy type of performance too. Like
But you do with Joanne, like you have to do so much work to hit the dissonance that she's hitting in those notes. Like you have to nail that. Which people who are usually the sing-talker roles are not the ones that are. They usually have those roles for a reason, right?
Yeah.
No, it's deceptively simple in that way where you're like, oh yeah, all she's doing is yelling. And you're like, well, she's yelling very specifically.
Beautifully.
Yeah. She's yelling at a very clear tone.
Yes, yeah. I do want to turn it down every time I get to that point.
Yeah.
Yeah, while we're on it, have you seen the company doc that I held up a second ago?
No.
This one?
I have not.
It's insane. It's a documentary made on the original Broadway cast recording. And Elaine Stritch in it, who plays Joanne, has a bit towards the end. They've basically used all of their shooting time or recording time in the space, and it's like 3 a.m. And she does Ladies Who Lunch like 12 times. And they can't get it right. Oh. And it is like brutal. And it's like really good, but it's like almost there. And you're kind of like, man, they're kind of like dicks even here. You're like, I think one of these probably would have been it.
Yeah.
And they actually are like, okay, let's wrap it up for the night and we'll do a pickup. And she comes in the next day to do it and kills it on the first take.
I love that.
It is insane how much better it is too.
Yeah.
Where you're like, holy fuck. Like, okay, they knew what they were waiting for.
Yeah.
But it's like, it's maybe the best part of that documentary. Like,
I love that.
Yeah. It's a really, really good documentary. Go ahead.
I was just going to say that's a great sort of anecdote for people who work in the film industry. Where it's like, yeah, of course you're not going to give your best work after you've worked 15 hours staying up till 3 a.m. Let's just come back the next day.
Yeah. I feel like a lot of people could take that note.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
But studio space is so expensive. I mean, it's like, costs a couple $1,000 for just like, a couple minutes. This production's pretty interesting. It's pretty sparse on the set. All the actors are holding the instruments.
I love
that they're playing, which is a fun conceit.
Although at times I do feel like it's unfounded.
I think I agree.
Yeah.
I think it works for a couple moments really well, and then there's other parts.
Replacing the do-do-do-do-do's with like
the saxophone. Yeah, insane.
I love that.
Because like that builds a comedic punctuation to the song that was kind of already there.
Yeah.
And even the London and the new Broadway revival with the gender swap Bobby, they've done something really fun with Grateful You Could Drive a Person Crazy also.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've heard it, but it's a barbershop trio.
Yes.
Instead of quartet.
But,
it's a really great tweak.
I love the like shift from the Andrews sisters, because the Andrews sisters like makes so much sense for three women.
Right.
But like the shift to the barbershop is so perfect.
Yeah, there's a couple choices in the revival that work pretty well.
Yeah.
This one, so like the 70s one was really all about the ensemble.
Yeah.
Like Bobby was not the focus of it. There's a 95 or 97 production that was directed by Sam Mendes in London. And that shifts it more towards being Bobby's story. It's set in his apartment, so you kind of like always get the sense that it is one place, one time, and just him. He's like kind of going on a bender. Like in Side by Side, he's doing lines of coke and then just
Yes.
dancing around the room like crazy.
Yeah.
And it really works. But I think this one just kind of pushes that idea a little further. I think Raul just gives such a great performance as Bobby that it's gut wrenching.
Mm-hmm.
It feels like the whole point of the show is to like
Showcase
him. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I think everyone else does a really good vocal performance. But there's like some actors that don't come in fully. And that's probably the trouble of getting people who could also play these instruments. 'Cause
I hate the Paul. I'll say it.
yeah.
I hate Paul.
He's not great.
Amy's husband.
Yeah.
I think didn't they even cut like
Hate him.
they've cut a little bit of like some scenes here too. Like there's a bit with them with the orange juice and all that. There's a
No,
lot,
the orange juice. There's more.
Yeah.
Yeah, I will say though, the Amy really flexes on everybody because the tempo at which Getting Married Today is written is a third slower than how she does it. Like she does it 30% faster.
Wow.
Yeah.
No wonder this one feels so fast when you listen
because
to
like
it.
typically it's like, and then not to flex, but I did it at her speed.
Yes.
Well, yeah, after she does that, it's like, all right.
The bar's been raised.
Yeah.
But so the original is like, pardon me, is everybody there? Because if everybody's, and she does it like, pardon me, is everybody there? Because everybody's there. I don't think over. And
There's something that this Amy does too, which is she continues the pattern of sing speech in the dialogue parts.
Yes.
She does that really well.
And you're like, oh my God, like that's one of those beautiful things where, you get handed something and you're like, oh, it's been made iconic.
Yeah.
Like, how can I put my own twist on it? And there's just always that potential.
That was one of my favorite doing the monologue, honestly, because the song is iconic and there's only so much you can do within the rhythms that have already been given to you. And there's a lot that you can do with Getting Married Today. Like, but there's so much that you can do with what comes after and like how that informs the character of the song. And when I was playing Amy, my character was definitely like more overtly manic. And so where we got to like more so than, because a lot of Amy's I've found play it like very internally and they're like, pardon me, is everybody there? Like it's very, and I was like, from the beginning and then that like it built and built and built and then it accumulated honestly more than it did at the end of the song. It accumulated in the scene after because there was this one part where she goes, oh, the toast, now I blew the toast. And usually when that line's done, it's like, oh, the toast. And I literally I was like, oh, the toast. I like at the top of my lungs, I was like, now I blew the toast. And the audience was like sitting there, like watching me just like scream at the top of my lungs. And I think this Amy is one of the best Amy's that I've seen at taking the energy of her song into the energy of the scene thereafter.
When I was watching the scene, I was thinking about how I would love to see you do it because I figured it'd be actually hilarious.
Thank you. Yeah, it's literally so much of the video that I have of it is just me like full ass screaming. There's like one part where she goes, stop staring, Paul. And I like turned like fully around from the audience. I go, stop staring at the top of my lungs. And so it was just like those moments of that. And then these moments of like absolute silence in between where I was just like staring at Matt Dorigo. If either of you know him, another Vegas OG. He went to Faith Lutheran. When we all went to Gorman. No, your guys's.
I'm
we're
a
not in
grade
the same
below
grade.
Well, yeah, that's yours.
So above you.
Somewhere around there.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's no Langford.
No.
Otherwise, I would have known by the name.
Yes. Matt was so much of that was finding the balance between like the silence and the speed, and that like really she's either at 0 or 100. Like she's never at like 75%. And I think that's very different than the Amy that's in this production, who very much like a lot of the time was very quiet and controlled and like that kind of manic, which is, I just feel like it's so fun, like with such an iconic character, how many ways you can take it.
Yeah. No, and like exactly that you can still be high energy, but you can be loose with it instead of like pointed, right? Totally different.
I really like what they did with the instrument of blanking on her April.
Yes.
June. April. With her instrument, with that scene right before the song where he's like caressing the
saxophone.
The
saxophone.
saxophone.
Yes.
I loved that so much, especially with like how stripped back everything is. Like it makes so much sense to have them like almost on opposite ends of the stage, but still like
It's
right there
He
connected.
builds a sensuality too.
He does a great job.
Like,
Yeah. He's like almost attractive for a minute, I want to say.
Another moment that I think they use the separation really well is in the wrestling scene. Like when
I don't like that actually.
you don't?
I don't like that.
You don't like them being on opposite sides of
I
the
don't like
stage?
that either.
I like it.
No, it
I
makes
thought
sense.
it was so cool.
It makes full sense for this vision of the production. Especially because like there's not even liquid in the glasses.
Yeah.
that they're
Yeah,
drinking
yeah.
From, you know, but like it loses the clarity of, you know, she wins the first point, he wins the second point, she wins the third. Like it's
the narrative is sacrificed, but I like the convention.
I'm curious as to what specifically you like so much about it.
Okay, so I really enjoyed that part because I like seeing the separation between them. I like it being like reinforced that like, though to me it kind of reads as like though they're fighting each other, they're actually kind of fighting themselves because
oh my god,
I like that.
That's cool.
that's my read on it. But if you don't have that read on it, it doesn't make any sense.
They have a really interesting scene too, because it's like he's telling Bobby that, you know, he's an alcoholic and he's like on the wagon now, and it's like she's coming in to correct him. You know, it's been a year and a half, year and a half, and it's like
it'll be a year in
it is
April.
the troubles that they're having, but like they're just getting caught up on like weird other things.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what's happening in that scene, I feel like, is they're fighting themselves,
Right.
but it comes off as them fighting each other.
Exactly, because even she's like, eat a brownie, like, you know, like because she's fighting the urge.
I can't.
To eat it. You can't. Like, that's pretty good. I mean, it's.
Sorry guys, I'm just here to convince you why you should like something you don't like.
No, I mean that's a really great point. That's like the beauty of staging like this, though, is that again you could put on an idea on top of it. But I think that's probably this. I think this was my first production of company that I saw.
Oh, okay.
I either saw this or the Neil Patrick Harris.
That
Patty
was my
LaCombe
first.
studded one. And
Neil Patrick Harris and Sondheim. Love affair for the ages.
So good.
I think I prefer the Philharmonic production though, just because like when I first saw this, I did not understand what was going on. I think there was just a bit too much of the text that went over my head.
That's fair. If this was my first watch of something, I don't know that I would have.
But having the knowledge of like what happens in this show makes this a really good revival. Like just because even like side by side, like we said, the bits with the instruments are really fun. You see every couple, you know, play together, and then when you get to Bobby, he just has a kazoo, which has no counterpart.
I love.
And I love that they have him turn too, like
To look for his
to
partner,
look
yeah.
and nothing.
Yeah.
I will say, I think my favorite instrument pairing, and this could be biased, but I think it's that Amy is the trumpet because that makes so much sense.
Yeah.
Like this loud ass bitch.
Yeah. So good. I mean, yeah, there's a couple other good instrument parts, but they do feel like few and far between. Like really the money shot is Raul coming into the piano at the end and actually
Doing
playing
that on his own, yeah.
I do like that the sex scene takes place on the piano though.
Yes.
Like that was something I noticed this time, and I was like, oh, okay, like there could be something here, like because you know he's even facing it the way like he would be if he was playing it at the end. Okay, so this version of Kathy, I think, is really good, especially in the acting scene. It's in the Another 100 People montage. They're at Central Park, and she's taking him to a waterfall.
And he's like, "What about that party?"
Exactly, and like every other rendition I've seen, it's like very light.
Yeah.
And in this version, like there's a moment of like, oh, why didn't we ever get married? And they play it like with so
really
much
well
passion.
done.
I mean,
I love it. They're
holding
both
each
like,
other's
oh.
hands, and they're like laughing, and they're like, man, maybe this is a thing. Even though she knows she's about to go get married to someone else entirely.
Yeah.
Like she's entertaining it for the moment. It's tragic.
Yeah. I will say I think that's so well done in the concept of like all the women have a moment where they're like, could have been Bobby, you know, like every single one. Yeah. And I will say that like feels very much like a commentary on like, you know, the like age old question, can men and women ever just be friends? Like the when Harry met Sally ass, like question. And I love like the way that it's like so nebulous and so ambiguous in like where all of the women kind of are like, no, right? No.
I think that has to add on to the pressure he feels from all of his friends too. Yeah. Because like Poor Baby is such a good song because you know it's the contrast of like he's with someone but they're imagining him being alone, but then also they're commentating on the girls he's bringing. Like, isn't she a little dumb for you? Like, she's not enough.
My fave is that Amy goes neurotic, bitch. And it's kind of funny because they all kind of do comment like things about themselves if you listen, like, or like things that in some way relate to their character. I think there's
which makes sense. I think when people judge, like it is almost always from a place of like, I hate seeing that in me, and like, you know, or it's I feel insecure about this and that's why I'm projecting it.
But nothing will ever send me the way that Amy going neurotic. I'm like, great. Bitch, you.
I was just you have the line where he says, I don't remember who any of the guys are, like who's who, but the alcoholic, when he's like, he's the only guy I know who should drink more.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's like, well,
it's all about him.
You're probably one of the only guys in your life who needs to drink less, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Devin, I have a question for you. It might be a tough one, but
okay.
You're married.
Yes.
How's your view on this changed since being single to being married? Not like to talk about your, but just the idea of commitment at all, you know?
Yeah. One of the interesting things is as I was like getting ready to get married, I was like, for probably maybe like 6 months before, like there was always this subtext in my mind of like, I can't wait to watch Company 6 months after I'm married.
That's so good. Honestly, the same, man. Like, I probably would have said the same.
But it didn't change as much as I thought it would, which I think I'm still trying to figure out. Some things that's really interesting. My wife is not a musical theater person. She's not a theater person. We sat down to watch this Company, and she gave it maybe less than 5 minutes. And she was like, yeah, I'm really not a theater person. And she was tapped out. She was still in the room, and like every now and then she'd be like, oh, that's what this song is from? Because she's heard me play it thousands of times. But like in that sense too, I would play songs like Sorry Grateful.
Yeah.
With her in the car, and she'd be like, I'd be like, I just want to listen to this song. Sometimes it'd be after a fight. Sometimes it'd be after a sweet moment. But like, to me, it's a very sweet song. Because it is both, obviously. But every time she hears it, she's like, you cannot. Like, because she only hears the sorry, right?
Right. The bad.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. And
such a good barometer in that way.
It really is.
It is a half-half. The same with the killing at the end. Which
exactly.
way do you lean?
Yeah. And so I think that's kind of the most interesting part about it is how different our takes are on the same songs coming from the same marriage.
Yeah. I will say, I know we talked about right at the beginning that Sweeney was like the most accessible Sondheim for people who don't like musicals. I would say Company is the least accessible Sondheim for people that don't like musicals.
100%.
If you don't love musical theater, you will not pay Company more than like 5 minutes.
Especially this staging, right?
Yes,
because
especially this staging.
One of my favorite things of that Philharmonic production like Side by Side's my favorite number. And I'm like, just to see them doing a proper chorus line during that with top hats and a cane.
It's fine.
I mean, you're just like, is there anything better than that in musical theater?
Yeah. Which,
like,
if you're not a musical theater person, you're going to roll your eyes at that.
Absolutely.
You're like, oh, we get it.
But it's like, that's the point, though.
And like this one, they all stand in like two lines with their instruments.
Yeah.
It works, but it just doesn't hit.
Yeah. I will say one of my biggest notes about the direct address, since we're speaking about that and like the separation and whatnot, is that it does take away from the like voyeurism, like the window into another person's life that you get that is so inherent to company. I feel like it gets rid of the sense of intimacy because you're feeling like they're presenting it for you.
Right.
And that is what frustrates me most about this staging. But then that's why I think I like that one, is because it's like that one part, the wrestling, is because it's so presentational. Like it's for Bobby, you know? It's like, we would be beating each other, but we can't be. So we are
right in the middle
wrestling.
Like,
Yeah.
That was just a disconnected point.
That's
that I
No.
there.
That's a really good point. I think you hit it though, because it is that lack of connection that like you just want that extra element. Yeah. I feel like this would make a really good proper movie.
Yeah.
But again, I think it would be so hard to nail.
I think it would go the way of the last 5 years, I have to say, with all the vignettes.
Definitely.
And it would be like, I feel like you would almost have to restructure everything. Like scenes, songs, because like you don't have an act break. Like going from "Marry Me a Little" to "Side by Side" works with the intermission, but "Marry Me a Little" was cut from the original version of Company because Sondheim was worried. It stated the final. You know, it was basically Bobby singing from the being alive perspective. And he's like, he's hitting this realization too early. So that, but you know, they brought it back. I think it works. It's one of my favorite songs.
I think so. I love both those songs.
But yeah, I don't know. It could work if it was like a little more I want to say like psychedelic in that way, where it's like it's really about his mind and like him going through it. Like if they kept like cutting back to like him in the apartment, the birthday party, like everyone in the room, like, you know, and like just it feels almost like a fever dream.
Yeah,
I think it could really take off in a cool way.
Like a Kaufman being John Malkovich kind of like take on it would be wild.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Let's do it.
All right, cool.
Let's put it on.
Yeah, sweet.
Yeah. So was I'm just circling back to like you coming to the show for the first time. Were you did you listen to this before you were in it, or did you just
So yes and no. I knew Company. I'd heard songs from Company. I didn't listen to the whole soundtrack until I was in the show.
Okay.
But before I was in the show, to practice, because I knew the guy who was directing it wanted me as Amy pretty confidently, I listened to this Getting Married Today. And I was like, oh my God, this is the hardest song ever. And so then when I went to auditions for this and they were playing it at the
slower,
like the written in the score tempo, I literally, well, first of all, they were like, we're going to slow it down for auditions. We know none of you know it well enough. And my ass was like, can you play it at tempo? And then they play it at tempo. We had a live pianist, and she was playing it at tempo, and I was like, no, at tempo. And she was like, no, this is tempo. And I was like, can I look at the sheet music? And I look at the sheet music and I look at the tempo and I'm like, oh my God. And I go, do you know the 2006 tempo? That's the one I've been practicing it at. And she goes, sure. And like, and she goes, I'm going to be real. I don't know if I know it well enough to play it at that tempo yet. And I go, That's okay. I could do it a cappella.
You are insane. You hit on one of the biggest things as like, these are the hardest songs for like for piano players to play in the room. Like that's one of the they tell you in like musical theater school, like, don't come in with a Sondheim song because they might not be able to play it.
Yeah.
Like it might be just too hard.
Yeah.
And like here you are being like faster, like to like a poor student. Who's just
It was literally a student. It was like a like, fuck. And I was like, no, we got it. We can do it together. And so every day before rehearsal, that was my warm up, is I would go over to the piano and like every single rehearsal. I'm not saying like most rehearsals. I'm saying before every single rehearsal, that was what got me into character. That was what got me in the headspace for rehearsal every day, was going over to the piano and doing this at the 2006 tempo. And like, we got like machines at it. I would walk over, I wouldn't say hi to anybody. I'd like walk in, I'd be like, okay, ready, go. And she'd just be like, wow. It was crazy.
Okay, so my follow-up is like you were aware of the gender flip version, at least, like when you were auditioning. So, and you said you wanted to play Bobby.
I did.
So yeah, like what draws you to the role? Because for me, like I mean, I don't know, it's very much a role written for a guy. So I was like, oh yeah, I think of myself immediately for it, you know? Like I'm just curious, like what what do you see in the character? Because it is broad enough for anyone too, like we said. But
I really get specifically Bobby's. Well, okay, so I will preface it by saying I have this horrific thing that I do where every time I'm in a show, I will like adopt the like things about the character into my life. Yeah. Like I think that was pretty recognizable over the process of me playing Cinderella when I did Into the Woods. I feel like there was so much of like the back and forth and not being able to make a decision that like started within me. Like I started not being able to like pick restaurants. Like my friends would be like, where do you want to go to eat? And I'd be like, I don't know. We could go here or we could go here or we could go. And I like the indecision of those 10 months of my life was insane. But that's why I always like want to play characters that I relate to. I think partly so that like my personality won't change that much.
Yeah, well, the bounce back for me has always been one of the toughest parts too as an actor.
Yeah,
yeah.
And with Bobby, like I really get the. But it's funny because all the things I get about Bobby are the things I get about Amy. I think Bobby and Amy are very similar. I think that's why they're like, she's his best friend. Like he says that. And I think, and he says that they're very similar. He acknowledges it. And I think
so
that like,
is she.
Yeah.
I mean, he's best man for the wedding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of what I get is I get the, like the fear of commitment, the not wanting things to change, the like, just constant questioning if you're on the right path, if you're making the right decision, if your next move is the right one. And also thinking back about all the things that could have been, all the things that you did and didn't do that led you to this exact point. One of like my favorite things, and I say that sarcastically because it sucks, but one of my favorite things to do is to like sit and like think about, oh, if I had made this decision, this would have happened. And then my life would be different in this way.
The butterfly effect.
Of course. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, you're just like, if I had picked a different school, like, you're like, my whole friend group's different. Yeah, everything. Yeah.
That shit's crazy.
No, I think you nailed it. I mean, most of those are like the things that I love about the character too. That same question of commitment. It's also like I say this as like a bisexual man, like there is a bit of this like push and pull of like the normal patriarchy, right? And then like the idea of being alone and being something else or different. I feel like that's a reading a lot of queer people have put on to this show. It's interesting though too, because like I don't think like my conception of like having a queer life is being lonely anymore. Like that to me feels more of a product of its time. Yeah. Specifically. But it's why like I kind of like the gender bent version. Yeah. They because Amy becomes Jamie and it's like a gay marriage. So there's just just a different idea of commitment being put, into everyone's head essentially. I don't know. I like there's probably too much in here, like where you're just like, you don't want to fully dig into why you relate to these characters.
Yes.
You're like, there's some truths in there, like not worth unearthing.
Yeah.
Too deep.
Yeah.
Too deep for sure. I think also the like battle internally between, which is with everybody, wanting that love and wanting to be free, and the idea that love and freedom are like
Opposed
in some way. And I mean, there are ways, you know, that people can, like, I feel like with like polyamory and stuff, people are starting to be like, hey, maybe like you can be in love with one person, but that doesn't mean like that, like ethical non-monogamy, you know, right. And like that kind of thing. I feel like we're starting to kind of move away from the idea that love and freedom have to be exclusive, but I feel like there's still so much a sense of like, you find the one and you stay with the one forever. And that's like a very scary thing in certain regards. And I feel like this whole show deals a lot with like the absolute like terrifying shit of that.
I think the divorced couple hits that really well. Mm-hmm. Like they are managing to be together and have their freedom in their own way. It just requires them to be divorced, but still living together.
Well, they say we're more married now that we're divorced.
Yeah. Which is so funny.
I love the line too when Bobby's like, "Oh, where are you living?" And he's like, "Well, here I have Sarah and my kids to take care of."
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, it's a pretty good perspective on divorce.
Yeah.
In some ways.
So good. Yeah, there's another line I love from that scene you were just talking about, Devin, which is, you know, Bobby, he says the unexamined life isn't worth living. And then it gets hit back with him. The other guy says the unlived life isn't worth experiencing.
Examining, I think.
Examining,
says,
thank
right?
you. Sorry, yeah, not experiencing. Thank you.
Yeah.
God, yeah.
That's real.
It's hella real. But it's also, what I love about the scene where Bobby is high with everyone else, there's a question of like, why haven't you settled down? And he gives like all the rote kind of things you would say, like, I wanted my career to get going. Oh, I wanted to experience life and like just never got it going. And then like everyone just turns it on him like, okay, you've done all those things now. Like you are at that point where you have no more excuses now. Yeah. And he's still wanting to use the same excuses. It's great. It's exactly how people like actually act, and you know, change is hard.
Yeah.
Like
change is hard.
It also shows you how important good company is to understand yourself and to push through your own bullshit. Mm-hmm. Like he wasn't going to get there without everybody else being like, right, so why haven't you? And then he's like, oh shit, right.
Yeah. I have a few like things on this being a movie, right? Like the movie version of this as a stage production. The editing is really interesting. I feel like the editing job's really good here because they're emotional edits. They're not always about the action that's happening on stage or showing everything happening. And there's even like really great stuff where like they'll shoot Bobby and then like some other people will start singing and the camera kind of like pans and pulls over to them.
Yes.
So that you understand the space, you know, like which is what you would get in theater where like someone starts singing, you don't immediately look over. Like you're still kind of a little locked in that.
I love that. There was one moment where they cut to Amy in the middle of some action that was going on and she was just like there, like,
right.
I forget. I'm trying to think of what it was. And it's like, yeah, that's how your attention jumps on stage.
Yeah.
Like you find
like someone's in the light and suddenly you go.
And it's like, they're maybe not talking, but like you're looking at that one or you're looking at this ensemble member because they're saying this, you know, like it's I thought that they did a really good job with making the camera like the audience's viewpoint. I never was like, wait, I want to be watching something else.
Absolutely. And they had like a crane, like you see it at the end.
Yes.
Yeah.
And like, They do a sweeping crane shot for being alive, like at the big crescendo of that crescendo. I'm fucking that up.
You had to slap the mic.
fuck that. But that hit really hard. It's like they had tools and they kind of pulled back and just like let the acting really be the showcase here. One more thing I really love is when they're showing off the bedroom. There's a part where like the girl is like, "Oh, what is this thing?"
Yes, she understated, and she looks up at the column.
Yeah, and the camera pans up with her, like because she does the slowest move up.
Yeah,
and, like it actually communicates the joke. You know,
yeah,
because the
absolutely.
joke wouldn't translate to film.
No,
but the director's letting it land, which is it's a hidden piece of directing, but like that hit me.
And it was really cool. Too, the way they lined it up with the audience laughter, like it hits right after that camera finishes panning.
Yep.
And it was almost jarring for me in like a good way, where I was, because it felt like the audience reacting to the camera, which I knew they weren't watching. But
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's crazy. No, that's crazy.
Yeah, you're right.
There were several times I noticed that I was like, the audience feels like they're watching the film version of this. Like, they're not watching the stage version.
And I do wonder if they had shot one production or if they shot a couple nights and cut together or what, because you know that's a thing you could do.
Yeah.
The tricks in editing, like all right, let's put in the audience laughter there, but it all feels seamless. In a way that you feel like it's one performance, which is the way it should be done.
I think I read something somewhere where it said they filmed the last two.
You usually don't want just one in case something goes
wrong,
you know? You're like, we brought the whole crew here. We may as well pay them an extra day.
Yeah. You think we can get the same camera guy we got for next week?
There's like a bit before Ladies Who Lunch where Joanne says, "Remember when everyone smoked? Like smoking used to be a cool thing." Like that was I just thought about that as like a very 60s thing of just being like actually remembering when literally everyone smoked. Because I every time I've watched it, I just thought of it in the context of like when you're young, your friends smoke.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then Bobby replies with like, "Oh, I never smoked. I meant to." And you know, Joanne's like, "Meant to, story of your life, meant to."
Yeah, that's
good.
Iconic line.
Yeah.
Incredible Joanne roast.
And then don't ever get married. Why would you? Mm-hmm. And Bobby says like, "Oh, for company."
Yeah.
Like everyone else. It's just like that. Like the few times they use company, like love is company is company, the word in the opening. You know, just being like, it's the whole ethos of the show, but it's just so beautiful. And Bobby eventually gets to "Who will I take care of?" Right.
I also think that whole phrase musically is so interesting because they go company, lots of company, love is company, life is company.
Yeah. Equating like love and life as the same things, right? Like if you do the A plus B equals C and take that out,
yeah. I will say I watched every single iteration of an Amy that there is, like to get, because I didn't want to base mine off of one,
of course.
But that, like, this is one of my favorite Amy's, I think, just because of how like differently she does it. She's
so good. There's one more moment I love where they come in with "Bless This Bride" and she screams.
Yes,
and runs under the piano.
Yeah.
So good. Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm like, this has been so long.
This is the longest podcast in the world.
I'm sorry. Let's wrap this up. Thanks so much for coming on, guys.
Yeah.
Where can people find you, find your work, all that type of stuff?
Yeah. At Samantha Georgette Reed. That's SAMANTHA GEORGETTEREED. Yeah, my website is that same. At Archetypes Productions on Instagram is my production company. And is that everything that I feel like I should promo right now? Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Devin?
All my stuff is just in my apartment waiting to be let out.
Well, you can follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Letterboxd. We do a video podcast on YouTube. You can listen to this on audio podcast formats. You know the deal. go check out another episode of Cinema Span. Share this with a friend, something like that. Thanks for joining us, everyone.
And stick around for me singing Getting Married.
Oh my God, wait, I forgot. Yeah, okay, go.
Do you want it, actually?
Yeah, you got to. That's
okay.
Yeah, that's.
Hang on. I'm putting in my headphones so that I can make sure that I'm at tempo the whole time. Give me a sec. I just pulled it up in the car on the way.
I'm so excited.
I listened to it once because I was like, is it recording?
Yeah.
I listened to it once. I was like, there is the possibility that I will do it on the podcast.
You said there was the possibility. I'm like, it's happening now.
Yeah,
that's it.
That's true. I literally walked in and I was like, hey, if you want. And you were like, yes.
I want.
Okay, ready? Let's see. I'll fast forward to 55 seconds, which is where... Yeah, okay, ready? Pardon me, is everybody there? Because if everybody's there, I want to thank you all for coming to the wedding. I'd appreciate you going even more to me. You must have lots of better things to do and not a word of it to Paul. Remember, Paul, you know the man I'm going to marry, but I'm not because I wouldn't ruin anyone as wonderful as he is. But I thank you all for the gifts and the flowers. Thank you all. Now it's back to the showers. Don't tell Paul, but I'm not getting married today. And then, bless. Hang on. I will carry on. I can do the whole thing.
Bless this bride. Insane.
I'll find his cufflinks. They're on the dresser, right next to my suicide note. Listen, everybody, look, I don't know what you're waiting for a wedding. What's a wedding? It's a prehistoric ritual where everybody promises fidelity forever, which is maybe the most horrifying word I've ever heard, and which is followed by a honeymoon where suddenly you'll realize you saddled with a not and want to kill me. You should send some thanks a bunch, but I'm not getting married. Go have lunch, because I'm not getting married. You've been grand, but I'm not getting married. Don't just stand there. I'm not getting married. And don't tell Paul, but I'm not getting married today. Go, can't you go? Why is nobody listening? Goodbye, go and cry at another person's wake. If you're quick for a kick, you could pick up a christening, but please, on my knees, there's a human life at stake. Listen, everybody, I'm afraid you didn't hear. Do you want to see a crazy lady fall apart in front of you? It isn't only Paul who may be ruining his life. And both of us will be losing our identities. I telephoned my analyst about it, and he said to see him Monday, but Monday you'll be floating in the Hudson with the other garbage. I'm not well. I'm not getting married. You've been swell, but I'm not getting married. Clear the hall, because I'm not getting married. Thank you all, but I'm not getting married. And don't tell Paul, but I'm not getting married today. And then my favorite is actually the last part because of the
overlapping
things and the overlapping, but the things that she lists. Thank you for the 27 dinner plates and 37 butter knives. Yes. Hang on. Rain. I like these like long pauses in between where I'm just like waiting.
They're like necessary, I imagine.
Go, can't you go? Look, you know I adore you all, but why? Watch me die like Eliza on the ice. Look, perhaps I'll collapse in the apse right before you also take back the cake, burn the shoes, and boil the rice. Look, I didn't want to have to tell you, but I'm maybe coming down with hepatitis and I think I'm gonna faint. So if you want to see me faint, I'll do it happily. Wouldn't it be funnier to go and watch a funeral? So think of the 27 dinner plates, and 37 butter knives, and 47 paperweights, and 57 candelores. I am not getting married, but I'm not getting married. See, I'm not getting married. Still, I'm not getting married. Let us pray that we're not getting married today. And then after that, you guys.
So good.
Thank you. After that, there was a solid like minute long where I just, because I ended the song on my knees. The way that we choreographed it.
Were you in a wedding dress?
Yeah, I'm in a wedding dress.
Yeah.
Well, I'm in like a short wedding dress because we wore one costume the whole time,
right,
as you do for company. And I had a cardigan over it the rest of the time. And then I took it off for and it's like this really short lace dress. And I am on my knees, hands and knees after that, because the last, like basically the chorus is threatening me is how we choreographed it. Like they're like kind of like coming at me and I'm like, and so I'm up like front, like touching the front row of the audience. I fall to my knees at one point and I'm like scooting away from them. And the song ends and I spend like 30 seconds on the ground as people are clapping going, I'm just like,
and that's real.
I'm like I'm desperately trying to catch my breath because I'm also running around the stage. Like this one was a little bit chiller because I was sitting here, but like I am sprinting around the stage the way they choreographed it. I'm running away from the people. I'm running away from Paul, who's following me around the stage. And then at the end, I'm literally just like, and then I go, don't talk. And that's how I started it. And the audience was like, and I was like, so it was just like, one of my favorite things I've ever done. I love every time I do a Sondheim, I'm like, this is my favorite thing I've ever done, because it's like, it's almost like you get Stockholmed into it. You know, you're like, you're hating your life. You hate your life the whole time you're doing it. And then do you hear all the spit that I have in my mouth right now? It's literally, that's what else I would do during.
You're still trying to get off the rhythm too.
Yeah.
You're like,
No, you guys, you know how I was talking about that I did, like a lot. Yes, sorry, I can hear it. That I like take on my character.
Yeah.
I have never talked faster. I was just like in my gen ed classes, because this was while I was in college. I was in my gen ed classes like, yeah, and then anyway, I think that we should do this. And my professors, all of them hated it so much, especially my theater ones who would like, they were like, okay, so you have to do, I was doing like a Cassandra monologue from like classic Greek mythology, you know, at the time. And it's like this like horribly sad monologue. And I was just like, yeah. My professor was like, please let it go. Please stop. Let it go. Stop. But yeah, that was so crazy. That it literally is Stockholm syndrome though, because you're hating your life, you're hating it. You're like, this is the worst thing I've ever done. I can't believe that I would do this to myself. Like, what kind of stupid ass bitch am I being in a Sondheim? Like, it's the hardest thing ever. And then opening night and you're like, wow, I've never been prouder.
Do you have, just off the dome, any other like dream roles in Sondheim shows?
Honestly, I've been so lucky I've gotten to play
the ones you
both of my Sondheim dream roles, which are Cinderella and Amy. But I'd love to do both again. Especially Amy. I do feel like there's so much more that I have to that.
Yeah, we're putting you in the movie version.
Thank you. And then Mrs. Lovett is my other.
I was surprised you said you played Mrs. Lovett, because like I would love to see that too. Like I was curious if you. Yeah. I was curious if you would rather do Joanna or Mrs. Lovett. And
Mrs.
I was just
Lovett.
Like, so glad to hear you were in the Lovett case.
Yeah.
Yeah. Much more interesting.
Yeah. Joanna is like a Rapunzel role, if that makes sense. You know?
Yeah.
There's even the line where they're like in the tower.
Yeah.
They say something like locked in your tower singing something in there.
It's true.
Okay. I've caught my breath.
That was incredible, Sammy.
Oh, thank you.